Hello everyone, this video is to explain CSAT assessments to anyone who is interested in knowing your current status of cybersecurity controls. Okay, before we can move on to the assessment or any of assessments that you want to do, let's first of all take a step back and try to realize what is cybersecurity. Okay, a lot of people, especially a lot of my customer in Asia, when we discuss about cybersecurity, they always talk about technologies, right? So for example, Nexus, what can Nexus do? What can Cisco do? What can EDR do? Etc. Okay, and someone is just, some of them has mentioned that last year we have invested like, millions of dollars into Nexus, our expensive monitoring tools. So we are pretty safe. That's normally the response I receive from my customer. To be honest, my questions to them then is that I agree with you that Nexus is a good tool, okay, and even Cisco is a good tool, Intune is a good tool. We have a lot of great tools out there for you to choose. However, may I ask if you have the policies on top of your tools or not, or you just leave it there running, doing the job for you without devising any strategy for your tools? Cybersecurity first start with the policies, your company policies. Now let me pick a very simple example. Okay, so for example, you don't allow anyone in your organizations to use Dropbox, and that is your policies. And then we move on to human, right? Because you need to train your staff, you need to explain to your staff, to your employees, why should not they use Dropbox, right? So for example, well, because Dropbox is mostly for personal use, and then the company cannot control how are you, handling the data, sharing the data, and it might lead to data leak, okay, cause big trouble for the organizations. And then we talk about technologies in this case. How can you control people not using Dropbox? By technologies, what tools can you use to help the IT team to get things in control? So you see, with any single technologies or the tools that you are using, you still need a controls in place. So for example, even with the EDR, you still need a weekly review on the log files, and then devise a strategy accordingly based on the day-to-day activities. And that's what you should do to have the good cybersecurity, combining between human, policies, and technologies together, not just technologies. And that's why we need the cybersecurity assessment. So, as you're aware, in the past few years, cybersecurity is a very hot topic. Everyone is talking about it. There are new laws around the world about cybersecurity, data protections, etc. Like GDPR in Europe, PDPA in Thailand, new cybersecurity law in Philippines and in Vietnam. However, what I realize is that not many people knowing what to do. More like they're shooting in the dark. And especially in the digital world nowadays, people are focusing on chasing digital transformations and having a mindset of getting things works first, secured later. So they don't focus too much on cybersecurity as they thought. And also they have the mindset of thinking cybersecurity is IT problems, right? So for example, your receptionist lady or your sales guy, I mean non-IT staff, what happened if their machines got infected by malware? The very first thing they would do is they pick up the phone and yell at IT because they think it's IT problem. That is not the case. Cybersecurity is everyone's problem, right? So the staff or the employee should have the responsibility to protect their endpoints, their machines, follow the policies of the company at first place. Do not let your computer get infected by malware. Protect it yourself. Follow the policies. They should have the responsibility for that. Instead of yelling at IT, rely everything on IT. That's why we need the assessment to know whether you have the good technologies in place, and then you have a good policies in place, and then you have a good training program, a good education program for your users, for the staff in place yet. And that's how you can build up your cybersecurity. You have to know what you currently have and build on top of it. Now, in the past few years, Microsoft has invested heavily into their cybersecurity suite, which could help you on the technology side. And that's why in this assessment, we will give recommendations based on Microsoft technologies. The goals of the assessment is to provide you a roadmap of what needs to be done. Okay, step by step, what needs to be done and what technologies that could help you. The deliverables is the report following the CIS controls framework. Now, the reason that we pick CIS controls here is because it's very practical. It's not like for example, comparing to ISO 27001 framework, where there are a lot of things you need to go through, which most of the time doesn't apply to your business. CIS control can be applied to any business, even the small one, a big enterprise, doesn't matter. Okay, and CIS control is also recommended by US government, and also Azure environment is using CIS controls. The values that we are trying to help you to achieve is the alignment between business and IT. Okay, it is always in the book, alignment between business and IT. Business take controls, business make decision, IT makes report. That is always in the book. However, of course, throughout the days, not many people are following the book anymore, of course. IT doing their own things, business they were doing their own things. They don't want to, they rarely see each other, for example. However, I mean, of course, that is the dream goal that we are trying to achieve here. However, through this assessment, at least the first step that we could help you is to align between your technologies and the policies and the optimizations as well. Of course, if you already have something that you need, then we will check for your policies. So let me show you the sample report. So this report is conducted by a security consultant after the assessment. Okay, so the first thing first, this report explains how we do things. We follow sys controls as a checklist. So for examples, how's the Wi-Fi going? Ticks. How's the malware defense going? Ticks. How's the network segmentation going? Ticks. Step by steps. Okay, so there are 26 controls about cybersecurity, which we are going through to check for you, and we give you the average score, and then we give you the maturity rating. As you can see here, level 4, this is where business and IT is perfectly sync, right? As I mentioned, business take controls, business make decisions, IT make reports. However, you don't really have to be there. Level 4 is for mostly, government, military services, or intelligence services. The normal business should land somewhere between 2 and 3. And that's where you should achieve to protect yourself at least. I'll come back to section number 2 later. So in number 3, we start with explaining to you what are the sys controls and your current score based on each controls. Looking at the score, you can see that anything below 2 should be brought up to 2 at least. And here are the recommendations based on the score. And there are a long list of recommendations. However, I'm not going to go too deep into details in here. The report will be shared with you after the presentations, so don't bother reading now. I will focus more on section number 4, which is the technical data and analysis. So to do the assessment, we also need to do the technical scan for you. At the technical scan, we'll gather the information within the environment to find out about your current status of your security, right? And to prove to you why you have those score. So for example, sys control number 1 is about the control of hardware access. I once did an assessment for my customer, and the customer had Intune, and they were pretty confident in their controls. However, after the assessment, in sys control number 1, they had 1.5. The reason being is because they had Intune, but after the assessment, we still found out a lot of Windows XP registered to the system, still active. A lot of Android 6.0 registered to the system. Now it proved that they do have the tools, the solutions to help them, but they don't have the compliance policies for their security reason. So they still allow staff to connect to the system with the suspicious operating system to spread the malware and handle the data or the suspicious devices. So having the tool without the compliance policies, it doesn't help you. It's not cybersecurity at all. Okay, and this is how we give the recommendations for you, always on the management level, on the top level, on the governance level. Another example for that is that, for example, in sys control number 2, it's about the control of software access. And most of the time, to be honest, I find a lot of suspicious software in your environment, in customer environment. However, instead of showing to the customer what machines have the suspicious software, we just take the pictures, the screenshot, to prove that you do have this software, but we don't show you what are the machines. The reason being is because we don't want you to focus on fixing the problem on the spot. We recommend that you fix the problem on a management level, on a controls level. That's what CIS controls means. You have to be in control. Okay, so for example, in this case, right, if you have a lot of suspicious software in the environment, there are two solutions for this. So you could either control strictly your AD accounts. You don't let anyone have permissions to install anything. If they need to install something, they have to call out the IT department and go through IT department checklist, for example. But that's the hard way. It will consume your time and resources. The easier way is that to apply technologies such as SCCMs, Cloud App Security, App Locker, Windows Defender ATP with the AI technologies to detect the suspicious software for you, and that these solutions will help you resolve the problem completely without you have to fix the problem one by one, and it might occur somewhere else. And that's how we give recommendations in here. Always look at cybersecurity from the big picture. There are 26 controls to go through. Now let's get back to section number 2. Down here are the technical details, technical analysis. Up here in section number 2 is the roadmaps. It's more like the summary of what needs to be done, along with what technologies that could help you to fix the problem. Right? And you can also use these 2 pages of the summary to submit to the higher management to get the budget from them. And this can help you communicating with the business on the problems, because this report is verified and approved by Microsoft globally, so it shows you where the problem is, so you should fix them. Okay, now let's get back to my slide here. To do the report, to deliver the final report, we need to do two things. First is a technical scan, right, to gather data for analysis. And secondly, we need to do the questionnaire. So this is not a test. Okay, it's more like a conversations for you with probably the system administrator, the IT manager, to have to get the ideas on how you are doing with the policies currently, things that we cannot scan. And these 2, technical scan and also the questionnaire, are in our self-developed tool CSAT. Now the reason why I bring up CSAT now, because I don't want you to misunderstand the purpose of CSAT at the beginning of the presentations. Right? Because some people might ask, I already have Nexus to collect data. I already have SCCM to collect data. Why do we need CSAT, for example? Well, the reason being is because we don't want to connect to your sensitive or critical system to collect data. It's a cybersecurity issue. So that's why we need an independent tool to quickly and safely retrieve data for our analysis. And CSAT is an assessment tool. It's not a monitoring tool. So it's for us to use to get the data. So these are the data we collected and the scoring, of course. Okay, and let's move on to the timeline. We try not to consume too much of your time. Okay, so that's why in these presentations I'm trying to explain as clear as possible on the prerequisites, on what needs to be done and what we need from you as help, right? Because if you could help us prepare your environment properly within 1 to 3 hours, the documents will be shared with you, so don't worry. Then on the assessment day, it could only take from 2 hours to 4 hours maximum to finish the assessment. And then after that will be 3 to 5 business days for us to draw up the report. So it's not a big project. Okay, now let's move on to the requirements of the tools. I will skip all this. So CSAT tool is scanning all endpoints, Windows and Linux, scanning Office 365, SharePoint and Intune, and also Google Cloud, scan AD and AAD. And we only need to install CSAT on one of the VM that you prepare for us. And then the tool will scan the rest of the environment. What we need is that you help us preparing a VM for installations, which have one of these three operating system versions. And you don't have to buy the license for this activity because it will be finished within days. You can use the trial license. And these are the recommended hardware. The most important is one CPU socket. The reason being is because we are using SQL Express for our tool, and SQL Express can only utilize one socket. Okay, now for the AD environment, the requirement for the scan is we need an account for the scan, right? So we need a temporarily domain administrator account, and that account should be disposed after the assessment for security reason, of course. And then we need to have 5 predefined firewall rules enabled, and these are the rules. And you don't have to open the rules to any IPs. You only need to open these rules to the CSAT server that you prepare for us. And we have the document to help you configure the GPO to open these rules. For non-AD environment, for non-AD machines, we can still scan, right? So however, to scan the non-AD machines, we still need the same thing, right? We need the local administrator privilege on the endpoints, and we still need to enable 5 predefined firewall rules here. So we do have the manual script to help you. The script needs to be run on each of the endpoints needs to be scanned. And then after you do the assessment, you can do the rollback script to roll back the configuration of your endpoints. The script will just create a temporarily local administrator account and then open the firewall rules, backup configurations, making some changes. The rollback script will undo all this. And we also need your help if you are using Office 365. We also need your help to configure a tenants app on Office 365 so that we can scan, and SharePoint as well, of course. Okay, now to explain how CSAT works, you can look into this diagram. Once we initiate the scan, CSAT will send the agents to the endpoints. Each agent is only 5 meg and sending maximum 30 agents at a time. So 150 meg maximum at a time. And this CSAT is not a monitoring tool. It's an assessment tool, so we don't need ongoing traffic. Okay, so there's no ongoing traffic. It's only send the agents once, and then once the agents are on the endpoint, with WMI protocols and Windows API, it collects all informations. After informations are collected, agents will then post the data back to CSAT server. So that's the second transactions, and then the agents destroy themselves. That's it. Okay, so no ongoing traffic for CSAT. Okay, so that is pretty much it on what I need to explain. So if you have any questions, please feel free to contact your partners, your deployment partners, so that they can explain more. Thank you for your time.